Welcome back to the Scrapbook.com YouTube channel. This is Leah Lawson, and I'm excited to share these Christmas in July themed shaker cards with you today. My backgrounds on today's cards are going to feature patterned papers from the Merry patterned paper pad. This is a really festive and fun pattern paper set in shades of red, pink, mint, green, white. They're super fun. So these are the two patterns that I selected for my cards today. One is a fun candy cane theme, and the other is the snowmen. So I'm going to start by die cutting these panels with the largest nested A2 rectangle. Now, of course, you could trim with a paper trimmer for this, but I like to use dies just because it gives you that nice clean edge and is really good about making sure that your panel, is exactly A2 in size. So I am taping that die down to the candy cane pattern paper first and taping it down with a little bit of mint tape from Scrapbook.com. And then I'm going to go ahead and run it through my die cut machine. And as you can see, I have just a perfect panel. Now I'm going to do the same thing. However, I am going to align that die so that we are getting a landscape themed panel versus a portrait like the candy cane patterned paper. Once again, I'm just running that through a die cut system. And now we have our two panels that will become the background of our shaker cards that we're going to create today. So up next, we also need to cut out the acetate for one of our shaker cards. Now I'm going to show you two ways that I like to make shaker cards today. One's a little bit more traditional and one is a fun take on that. So we are going to grab that second sized A2 rectangle in the nested die set from Scrapbook.com. And I'm going to cut that from the acetate. Now this is heat resistant acetate because once we get a little bit further into the video, we are going to heat emboss directly to it. So make sure if you're following along or if you are creating these cards after the fact that you be sure to pick heat resistant acetate. So we now have a perfectly sized rectangle that I'm going to put back on its little protective sleeve just so it's easy to find and I don't lose it. Now I have two A2 sized white cardstock panels as well, which we are going to create our shaker windows with the nested flat ovals dies from Scrapbook.com. Now, as you can see, that larger one was just a little bit too large. It didn't leave us enough room from edge to edge. So that second size ended up being perfect. And I went ahead and die cut those frames off camera. And now we have all of the background and the window pieces for creating our shaker cards. Before we assemble our shakers, let's go ahead and do the heat embossing to the acetate. So as mentioned, this is heat resistant acetate. I am pretty sure that I am using the Spellbinders branded version. I believe Scrapbook.com has a branded version as well that states it is heat resistant as well. So first things first, we are going to adhere the sentiment down. Now, it will really stick to that acetate, so no worries. You can move it around. You'll just have to rip it up. But I realized that having that frame in place would probably make it a little bit easier to make sure that I have aligned my sentiment properly. So I'm going to go ahead, add that little frame in there, and that definitely acts as a good guide for adhering down the sentiment from this fantastic holiday themed sentiment set that I'm using today. I'm going to be featuring the two biggest sentiments on the stamp set, just because these are kind of bold, colorful cards, and I really, really want the sentiments to stand out. So when you're heat embossing to acetate, you really don't do anything different other than verifying that it's heat resistant. You then go ahead and prep it very well with an anti-static powder tool, and then just ink up your stamp like you normally would with whatever embossing ink is your preference. I am using Versamark ink. Now, I do like to try to get a stamp impression, a good stamp impression on the first go round. Now you can always line it back up and try to restamp again if you feel like you didn't get very good coverage, but the stamp will pull up that acetate as we lift the lid of our Misty stamping platform here. So I think it's nice to just try to get a really good stamp impression that first time. Then you don't run any risk of the image haloing and having to start over basically. Here I'm just checking it out. I'm verifying that I got a good stamp impression. So then, like normal, you just want to take your inked up image with embossing ink and cover it in whatever embossing powder that is your preference. I am using just a nice opaque white embossing powder today, and you'll see there is a lot of stuff that's staying behind. If you give a few really good thumps with your finger, like 2 really good flicks, a lot of that will come off. And then you can come in with a more detailed brush and just kind of brush away any little particles of embossing powder that have been left behind or kind of stuck to the areas that you don't want them to stick to on the acetate. Now, I'm not going to say this is a perfect science. After I heat set mine, I did have a little bit of residue here and there, and I'm a firm believer that this is handmade, not Hallmark, and little imperfections is okay. So when you are using the heat gun on acetate, even though it's heat resistant, you don't want to keep your heat gun in one area for too long. So you definitely want to make sure it's nice and hot, and then keep moving your heat gun around that acetate until you have fully melted all of the embossing powder. And look at how fun that is. Now, as mentioned, I still had a little bit of stray embossing powder here and there that heat set to the acetate, but once you adhere it to the card and you have the shaker mix underneath it, no one is ever going to notice. So let's go ahead and assemble our first shaker card. So I'm just using a little bit of liquid glue to adhere that candy cane patterned paper down to, that's just a top folding A2 sized card base. And once I feel like it is nice and aligned and where it needs to go, I'm going to go ahead and add a clear stamp block to the top of this, which this is the only thing I use them for anymore, is basically like a paperweight. So I'm going to put that on top to set in place while I make the shaker window. So I am using some of Scrapbook.com's double-sided adhesive. It's like a tape roll basically. And I love these for shaker cards. So I am just adding it to the back of my white cardstock panel, or one of them that I'm turning into my shaker window. And you'll notice I am adding the tape along each edge. So once we have adhered this down into place, we will go ahead and remove all of the release paper. And then once that is complete, this is when we will adhere down that heat embossed acetate panel that we created just moments ago. And that will become our shaker window. So this is a really simple step. Now you could absolutely use liquid glue or tape runner if you wanted. I just really love the secure hold that the double-sided tape offers. And then you don't accidentally have any liquid glue squishing or getting onto the acetate where you don't want it. I tend to be a little heavy-handed with liquid glue. So if you have a softer hand or you're a little bit better adhering it down and liquid glue is your preference, feel free. But I'm going to stick with the double-sided adhesive. So I'm just taking my time here to make sure that it's nice and aligned. I want that sentiment to be, as closely as aligned as possible. We're going to add a few embellishments or elements at the end, so it's okay if it's not perfect. Now, it is time to create the dimension for our shaker window. Now, this foam tape from Scrapbook.com is basically the perfect width and also gives the perfect amount of dimension for our shaker mix. Now, if you were using a little bit more of a chunky shaker mix, you might want to double this part up. I am not, however. I am using more, I'm using the Scrapbook.com Shimmer Flakes for my shaker mix today. So they're not super bulky. So I feel comfortable with just one layer of the foam tape today. But like I mentioned, if you are going to create something that's a little bit more bulky, whether they're sequins or maybe they have added jewels or gems into them, I would definitely double it up. But because I'm just going to use a really fun the Shimmer Flakes, which are a little bit flatter, I'm good with the single layer. So here they are. These are the Shimmer Flakes I'm going to use today. I'm using the unicorn color, which is that white iridescent Shimmer Flakes, glitter flakes, and then the confetti, which is a little bit more of a pink tone. Honest truth, once the confetti is sitting on top of that paper, I don't know that you can tell that it's pink, but I do love having the little bit of variation between the two types of Shimmer Flakes on my cards today. So, but if you had just one option, you could certainly feature just that in your shaker card. So go ahead and pour a little bit out into the middle of your card base. You don't want it to be too thick because we want there to be room in between the shaker window and the Shimmer Flakes. So make it a pretty thin layer. And then once you're comfortable with how much of the Shimmer Flakes you've added to the middle, go ahead and remove the release paper from the foam on the back of the shaker window, and then just take your time to adhere that window into place. And then we have a fantastic shaker card. So go ahead and make sure that foam tape is secured nice and tight, and then go ahead and shake your Shimmer Flakes around and just look at how fun and glittery and iridescent it is. I mean, if a holiday can't be super shimmery, I'm not sure what can be. So when I do a traditional shaker like this, I always check where my foam tape intersects with each other. And if I feel like there is an opening, I just grab one of my liquid glues that has a metal tip. Today I am using the Barely Arts glue. It has that nice fine tip, and then I just squeeze a little bit of the liquid glue into the area where I feel like there might be a little place where some of the shaker mix can shake out. This shaker mix does have some glitter in it, which is a little bit smaller pieces. So I am doing this on all corners as needed, just to make sure none of my shaker mix can shake itself right out of the shaker card. So those three sides were, one side was fine, those three sides just had the little tiny hole that you could kind of peek through, and once that glue dries, you'll never even know it's there. So as I was creating my cards, I decided that the snowman pattern was just a little bit too big. But the great thing about it is on the back side, there is that really fun star pattern, which is considerably smaller. And it actually ended up working out better for the shaker card design idea I had in place. So I went ahead and I added that same double-sided adhesive to the back of my card, and I have removed the release paper from just 3 sides. So this is the other way that I love to create shaker cards. Here I have just a little bit of clear packaging that came from, I'm not sure what it came from, just another product that I either used up or organized into something else. And so I centered that card panel onto the plastic, and then I wrapped each corner around and secured it into place with the areas of glue that I had removed the release paper. So now you basically have this little like pocket or clear, it's basically like a clear pocket. And you'll notice I did not secure one of the ends, and that's because we're going to add our shaker mix in first. So I'm putting both of the colors of the Shimmer Flakes in there, the unicorn and the confetti, and I'm going to get both options in there. Now, before you shake, you definitely want to make sure that you close up that last side of the shaker. So go ahead, remove the release paper, and then fold that clear packaging over on that final edge. Now, you'll notice I have quite a bit of excess clear packaging. And basically, we're just going to trim that away with some scissors. You don't have to get it all, but it does make it a little bit less bulky if you trim as much of it away as you possibly can. And that also will make it adhere down to your card base a little bit easier when we get to that step as well. So once you have all of the excess removed, go ahead and shake your shimmer flakes around. Get them out of that one corner so they're all over your fun little panel here. And that is the way to make an edge-to-edge type of shaker card. So I hope you had fun checking out 2 different ways to make shaker cards today. So for this card, because we didn't emboss the sentiment to the clear packaging, because that's not possible, it's not heat resistant, we are instead going to heat emboss it in white to some of this red cardstock from the Fresh Duo paper pad. I love that paper pad. I am loving the Duo paper pads a lot. I love that you get the 2 color options for each paper. They're just really fantastic. They're also a really good weight, and they are really fantastic for doing stuff like this. So I treated it with some anti-static powder, and now I am just inking up that other larger sentiment today with some Versamark embossing ink, making sure I get a good impression, because this is a pretty bold and solid image. But it looks like I got a great impression. So we're going to go ahead and cover it in some white embossing powder, and you can just tap the back of it to get any excess off, and then go ahead and finish heat setting it with your heat tool. And look at how that white heat embossing just pops off of that red cardstock. I just absolutely love how this one turned out. So this set does have a coordinating die set. So go ahead and grab the die that coordinates with this sentiment, and we will tape it into place with some mint tape. And once you've done that, just run it through your die cut machine, and you will have a really bold, colorful holiday sentiment for shaker card number 2. And this is what it looks like when it is all cut out. How fun is that? I absolutely love when sentiments have dies, and I think every sentiment on that set has a coordinating die, so super fun. All right, let's start adhering our card together. So once again, I'm using some liquid glue, and I'm going to adhere my shaker window down with that liquid glue. It still works with the clear packaging on the back, so no worries about that. So once we have it aligned to the card base, now this card base is still A2 sized, but it is a landscape card, and I kept it top folding, but you can really do that. You can do whatever side you want, whether you like a side fold, top fold, whichever you want. So I'm going to go ahead and let that glue set up a little bit while I remove the release paper from the foam tape on the back of my second shaker window that we created earlier. And I gave it a little less time, but it will still set totally fine. So go ahead and adhere that shaker window to the front of your card base that now has that edge-to-edge shaker element added to it as well. So, and then this one you don't have to worry so much about the foam tape being in place, because your shaker mix is completely enclosed with the clear packaging. So you don't have to do that step that I took by checking the foam tape and all of that, like we did on card number 1. And we're going to go ahead and adhere that sentiment directly to the middle of the card. I am popping this up with some foam tape. I am just using that same foam tape that I basically have featured through the entire video thus far. Okay, finally, we are going to stamp and heat emboss some snowflakes. I'm using the Dainty snowflakes in both the large and the small set. I have had these snowflakes forever, and I've never had a chance to use them, and I just absolutely love them. So I'm so thrilled. Once again, I am using the Fresh Duo cardstock, the cardstock paper pad, and we're going to heat emboss them in white. So I'm prepping that cardstock with some anti-static powder, and then I will ink up the stamps in some Versamark ink. So you'll notice I trimmed down the paper in order to fit one of the larger snowflakes and then 3 of the smaller snowflakes. and you will see why I did that here momentarily. But go ahead, stamp those, make sure you got a nice impression, and then once you feel good about that, go ahead and cover those snowflakes in some white embossing powder. And when I was covering them in the embossing powder, I did notice that there were a couple of areas that I actually didn't stamp very well, but that's okay. I will put those in an area where either they won't show, or maybe I'll trim them off or tuck them under something. So if you don't get perfect stamp impression, don't worry. You don't have to do it over again. You can always find a way to use it. So here's the reason why I cut that paper in half. It's because I also wanted to set from the darker pink, which is on the other side of that. So I used that entire sheet of paper to create all of these fantastic snowflakes. Now, off camera, I went ahead and die cut all of the snowflakes using their coordinating die just to save a little bit of time in the video. And also, I just didn't want to make it boring as you watched me endlessly cut out snowflakes. So now I am just finding where I want the little snowflakes to go on each of the card. I am tucking them here and there, and you'll notice in the ones where maybe I didn't do such a great stamping job and I either missed the heat embossing or it's not the greatest, I am just either tucking it under or I am making sure that it is going off the card, which I am then going to just trim away once the adhesive is set in place. So now that I have found how I want to arrange the snowflakes on my card, I'm going to go ahead and adhere them into place. I'm once again just using some liquid glue for the larger snowflakes, and then we will switch over to foam adhesive for the smaller snowflakes. Want those smaller snowflakes to pop up a little bit more off of the card. So that is why I'm choosing to not use liquid glue for those ones. So once again, just using the same foam tape today. It's a fantastic one from Scrapbook.com. I love the width on it. It's just perfect. So once I add the foam tape to each snowflake, then I just remove the release paper and then go ahead and adhere it into the place where I think the snowflake looks best. You'll notice I am trying to avoid the sentiment so that I don't put a little snowflake piece over any of the sentiment. I love those sentiments so much, and I really do want them to shine on these cards. So while you finish watching me adhere down the snowflakes with the foam tape, I wanted to mention there are so many patterns in that patterned paper set that I used that you could create these cards over and over and over again with all of the different patterns. You could certainly make them easier by either omitting the snowflakes or stamping the snowflakes in a color rather than heat embossing. There's a lot of options to make these cards a little bit simpler and easier for bulk creating. Now, those snowflakes were just begging to have little jewels in them. These are some of my favorite jewels right now. They are the Aura AB self-adhesive jewels or gems from Spellbinders. Now, some of them are super tiny and they can be a little hard to put down. So I have found if you use like the pokey tool on one of your, whether it's on your embellishment tool or if you have a poking tool that's just separate, those smaller ones are a little bit easier to adhere down if you kind of grab the sticky part with the little sharp edge and then flip it over and put it down in its place. So just a little tip there when you're using these tiny little jewels that have just a little bit of sticky adhesive. Now, one I have noticed with these jewels is at first they are easy to pull off, but once they've sat on that paper for quite a while, they're really good about staying in place. Look at how fun those are. I just am loving these cute little shaker cards today. So those are the two shaker cards. Now, they might not be super shaky because they're thinner and the shaker mix is thinner as well. So, but what I love about it is they just give a lot of sparkle and shine to the cards, no matter if they shake violently or not, for lack of a better term. So I am just going ahead and trimming off the excess little bits of snowflake that are hanging off the edge of the card. I do that because I want them to fit into an envelope, and also because those were the couple of pieces where I didn't do such a great job on the stamping and heat embossing. So no one will be none the wiser now that I have trimmed away the little mistake parts. And we have two really fun sparkly snowflake cards. Now, I thought the little corners needed a little something. So I went ahead and I added just a little curved row of the same jewels, the Aura AB self-adhesive jewels from Spellbinders, and I'm just creating a little curve in that, the one curve on each card that has, it's basically pretty quiet. And as you can see, I accidentally had pulled up one of them and lost it here. So that's what I mentioned. They are easy to pull up at first, but I feel like once they've sat on the cardstock for a while and that adhesive is really set into place, they do stay. But they are a little easy to grab with your finger, especially if it has glue on it while you're adhering them down. So I just did that one lone corner on each of them that didn't have anything on it, and I thought that was just a nice little added touch. So those are my shaker cards 2 ways for Christmas in July this month. I hope you enjoyed watching them come together. Now, everything that I have featured is linked in the video description below. So if there's anything that has caught your eye, you can have easy access to shopping all the things that you want in the video description. So other than that, I hope you guys have a wonderful day, and I will see you next time.